Thanks for tuning into Dirty Teeth and welcome back to the channel. Recently I was super excited when Garmin sent out a press release announcing their all-new eTrex solar GPS unit. In this video, I'll go through the pros and cons of the new eTrex and whether or not I think the features make it worth the money for an upgrade. What can I say? I've been an eTrex fanboy for bikepacking for well over a decade now. I started off with an old school eTrex Vista HCX many years ago. And I've had my current 30X for well over 5 years now. Since this, they've made some slight upgrades with the 22-32X versions and more recently the SE model. This added great battery life, but not much else. I won't bother discussing it because the brand new solar version is basically an SE with an internal battery and solar charging capability. They even share the same user manual. Anyway, I'm jumping ahead. So yeah, my 30X is all scratched and beat up and I'm definitely in the market for a new one. Which is why I was so stoked to hear Garmin announcing the solar. I will make one quick disclaimer, and that is my 30X has been collecting a lot more dust lately since I recently purchased an Edge 540. I've been spoiled by all its features and I prefer to use it whenever possible. All of the new Edges, the 5, the 8, the 1040, they're all amazing. And there are solar versions of these to consider as well. But this video is about the eTrex, and there are still times, especially on longer rides and colder environments, where this is still my bread and butter. So in my mind, I was hopeful for an eTrex that would merge everything I love about the 30 and 32 series with the newer features found in the Edge 5, 8, and 1040 series. However, once I dug into the specs of the new solar unit, unfortunately, it didn't live up to my lofty expectations. The eTrex series has always been designed and marketed as a handheld hiking GPS unit, and the newest solar version is no different. Let's be clear, it's never been developed with bikepacking as a priority. It just so happened that the eTrex and all of its features have always been a natural fit for bikepacking. So what improvements and features does the solar have that are lacking with my 30X? Good question. Well, first off, they replaced the mini USB port with the USB-C. This modernizes it a bit, which is nice, but really doesn't do much in terms of function. Garmin also switched from ANT+ to Bluetooth for wireless connectivity. This makes it easier to sync with smartphones, apps, and other devices like heart rate monitors and power meters. But these upgrades are small potatoes compared with the one most notable feature, the incredibly long battery life due in part to the solar charging capabilities. Garmin claims infinite solar power at 75,000 lux. Okay, what does that mean? This basically assumes you're traveling in full, uninterrupted sunlight coming from high overhead. If you're riding in shade or tree cover or near sunrise and sunset, you won't be getting much solar charging at all. And if it's winter and the days are shorter and the sun is tracking in a much lower trajectory, that's also something to factor in. For some context, an overcast day may only give off 1,000 to 2,000 lux. That's a pretty far cry from 75,000. So definitely something to think about. And obviously bikepackers, especially racers, are oftentimes doing a bunch of riding at night, so that's also something to think about. Regardless, even if you throw solar charging out the window, the unit is spec'd with an internal lithium-ion battery that Garmin claims has 200 hours of battery life with GPS tracking on. To me, that's pretty dang impressive and a huge benefit for long bikepacking adventures. Any solar charging beyond that is just icing on the cake. Even if you have multiband GPS and GNSS tracking enabled for better accuracy, Garmin states the battery still has over 100 hours of life. Pretty solid. I should note that the SE model gets about 160 hours of battery life and still uses replaceable AA lithium ions. So if you like the features I'm chatting about, but don't care about solar and would prefer replaceable batteries instead, it's worth checking that out. It's also slightly smaller and lighter and $100 cheaper, retailing for $150 versus the $250 solar, just throwing it out there. Anyway, for comparison, my eTrex 30X, which is starting to feel more and more like a dinosaur, only gets about 25 hours of battery life with fresh lithium-ion AA's. And that's with the backlight turned way down and other setup options to maximize efficiency. So extended battery life is definitely a huge perk to these newer models. One of the poorest and most annoying features of the eTrex has always been its interface for bike mounting. You'd think after all this time, Garmin might recognize and improve this. Nope. Unfortunately, nothing's changed. It still uses the old school slider. I was hoping they'd swap over to the Edge quarter turn mounting system, which would open the door for many better aftermarket mounting options. And it's just more robust than the zip tie mounts that the eTrex currently uses. This means I'll still have to use my eTrex to quarter turn adapter. Not the end of the world, but it's definitely not a step forward for bikepacking. While I'm ranting, I think Garmin should make modular mounts for the back of the eTrex. So you can unbolt the slider mount and pop on a quarter turn mount if you want to, or vice versa. It would be super simple to incorporate into the design, and if they sold an edge mount as an accessory, they'd sell a ton of them. The size of the actual unit is also a negative. I know it's a trade-off to house the internal battery and the solar panel, but I've got to mention it's almost half an inch longer than the older series. Luckily, the weight is within a couple grams of the older models with AA batteries installed, so no biggie there. It's also slightly bigger than the SE model. Speaking of, even though the unit itself is bigger, the screen is actually smaller. It's 2.16 inches as opposed to 2.2 inches diagonal. And did I mention it's black and white? Yep. It's like looking at an ancient tube TV from the 1960s. Garmin says it's super bright and easy to see, and I get it. But man, after getting used to all the colored gradients and the Climb Pro feature on the new 540, it would be pretty hard to go back to black and white. Another turnoff for me is that external memory storage is not an option. I like being able to pop a micro SD card into my eTrex so I can record longer rides. And I use it for swapping and carrying backup base maps, which brings up the biggest sticking point that's probably going to bum out most bikepackers. The inability to add and load external base maps to the eTrex Solar. It comes with the basic cities maps loaded, which is pretty weak, just showing a few major landmarks. There's only 28 megabytes of internal memory. For comparison, my 30X has 3.7 gigabytes of internal memory. This is a big step backwards. And let me just repeat, there are 0 options to load any additional base maps other than the rudimentary one it comes loaded with. I know what you're asking, because I'm asking the same thing. I thought the whole point of the eTrex is to help us explore outside of and far away from big cities. At least that's how they market it. Adventure longer, ready, set, hike. They're inviting us to get out of Dodge, right? Ah, but there's the catch. For good or bad, Garmin's big push is to get you and I to open an account with their Garmin Explore phone app, which allows you to download base maps to your smartphone. This is also how you access their other touted features, like weather forecasts, smart notifications, and cloud storage. But you guessed it, only after you pair your phone with their app. I'm sorry, but then what's the point? You need cell service for these features to work. And if you're out exploring in the boonies, like the eTrex is supposedly designed to assist you with, then it kind of doesn't make sense to need cell service to access all the goodies, does it? You've got to deal with all your business before you leave cell coverage. In which case, it really is no better than just having a smartphone with great apps like Gaia and Ride with GPS already loaded up. So yeah, I'll be straight up. I'm not stoked on having yet another app forced on me to utilize these features. And I'd much rather be able to load base maps directly to the unit just like in the old days. Before I conclude, there's something else I want to mention. If you're a deep winter explorer or you like bikepacking in snowy conditions, make sure you listen to this. Garmin states that the minimum operating temperature of the eTrex Solar is -4 degrees Fahrenheit. Neither the 30X, which I have, nor the 22 or 32X have minimum operating temperatures listed. I've personally used mine down past -20 degrees Fahrenheit for extended periods of time without issue. Now, most of you probably won't be using it in those extreme temperatures, but it is worth noting. More importantly, however, is that Garmin published minimum charging temperatures for USB and solar at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. If this is accurate, you could have issues charging your device with the sun or a cache battery during activities occurring below freezing temps. Obviously, I haven't been able to test this, but I am going off Garmin's published specs. So please keep this in mind if you're considering this unit for the Iditarod or something similar. In closing, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. There is a lot to like about the eTrex Solar, but there definitely are a couple hiccups that, if addressed, could make this unit a home run for bikepacking. Garmin, if you're listening, it's pretty simple. I want the ability to load base maps to my eTrex without needing my cell phone as a middleman. I want to click it onto my bike using a quarter turn edge mount without having to use a third-party 3D printed adapter. I want a bright color screen. I'm not watching I Love Lucy. I want the Climb Pro feature like I have on my Edge 540. And while we're at it, I want your inReach satellite tracking technology built into the eTrex. You gotta admit that would be pretty sweet. With that said, although the solar is enticing in some aspects, I think I'll keep my $250, stick with my 30X, and continue carrying spare AA's. What say you? Who's running out and buying an eTrex solar? If not, why not? And what specs would you like to see? I can't wait to read your feedback in the comments below, and who knows, maybe Garmin will take heed. As always, I appreciate you hanging out until the end. If you found value in this video, please give us a like and consider subscribing to the channel. If you're already subscribed, I encourage you to become a channel member. You'll get access to members-only videos, other perks, and I could really use the help to keep the content flowing. Until next time, ride bikes, give back, pay it forward.